I always knew my brother Grant needed to be the smartest person in the room, but bringing Rowan Cade home felt like a dare. He gripped my elbow right before we walked into the private dining room, his knuckles white against his suit. "Don't try too hard. Allie," he whispered, leaning in close like he was sharing a secret instead of an insult. "She does not tolerate mediocrity." He smiled then, the same golden boy smile that had charmed our parents for 33 years. The maitre d' at the Gilded Stag checked his list with a skepticism that I had grown accustomed to in Larkhill. This was a city where last names functioned as currency, and while mine was Bailey, it was the wrong kind of Bailey. I was the Bailey who had quit a promising vice president track at a logistics firm to start a software company that barely made payroll. I was the Bailey who drove a 6-year-old sedan with a dent in the rear bumper. I was not the Bailey who was currently parking a German sports car out front, ready to announce his engagement to a woman the internet called a generational intellect. My brother, Grant, he was inside already. I could feel his gravity before I even saw him. The private dining room was paneled in mahogany so dark it looked black, absorbing the low light of the chandeliers. My parents were there, of course. My mother, Helen, was adjusting the stem of her wine glass, her face tight with the specific anxiety of wanting everything to be perfect. My father, Robert, looked proud but tired, the way he always looked when Grant was in the room, like he had successfully passed the baton and could finally stop running. Grant stood up when I entered. He looked expensive. That was the only word for it. His suit fit with a terrifying precision, and his hair was swept back in that careless way that cost $200 a month to maintain. "Allison," he said. He opened his arms. It was a performance. Everything Grant did was a performance, calibrated for an audience of whoever happened to be watching. He hugged me, and I smelled sandalwood and ambition. "You made it," he said, pulling back to look at me. "I was worried you would get stuck at the office. How is the lab? Still trying to save the world one line of code at a time?" "It is going well." "Grant," I said, "we just signed a new district in Ohio." "Cute," he said. He did not mean it to be stinging. That was the worst part. To Grant, my life was genuinely cute, a hobby, a little struggle that I would eventually grow out of when I realized that real adults worked for consulting firms or hedge funds. "Come meet Rowan," he said, turning me toward the woman sitting quietly at the head of the table. I had Googled her. Obviously, everyone had. Rowan Cade, 31 years old, investigative journalist for the National Chronicle. Shortlisted for a Pulitzer Prize 2 years ago for a series on pharmaceutical price fixing in rural Appalachia. Her online photos made her look severe, sharp-angled and monochrome, in person. She was smaller than I expected. She wore a dress the color of steel, simple and devastatingly tailored. She was not looking at her phone. She was not fidgeting. She was sitting with a stillness that felt predatory. When Grant introduced us, she turned her head slowly, and her eyes, a dark, unreadable gray, locked onto mine. "It is nice to meet you." "Allison," she said. Her voice was low, devoid of the high-pitched social niceties women in Larkhill were trained to perform. "Grant talks about you often." "I bet he does," I said. Taking the seat across from her, Grant laughed, a rich, booming sound that signaled to the waiter we were ready for champagne. "He tells me you are the rebel," Rowan said, still watching me. I froze. The rebel. It was such a Grant thing to say. It framed my failure to conform as a personality quirk rather than a professional choice. "I just like to build things," I said. Rowan nodded. It was a small movement, but precise. She was cataloging me. I could feel it. She was noting the fray on my blazer sleeve, the way I held my water glass, the hesitation in my voice. It did not feel judgmental. Exactly. It felt like she was gathering data. The dinner progressed with the usual rhythm. My mother asked about wedding dates and venues. My father asked about Grant's portfolio. Grant held court, telling stories about his partners at the firm, his golf game, his influence. He was charming. I could not deny that. He had a way of making you feel like you were the only person in the world. right up until he decided you were no longer useful. And then the light turned off. Rowan said very little. She ate with small, deliberate bites. She watched Grant perform with a look I could not place. It was not adoration. It was more like a scientist observing a particularly interesting specimen in a petri dish. Halfway through the main course, I excused myself to use the restroom. The tension of being the disappointed daughter was giving me a headache. I washed my hands in the marble sink, staring at my reflection. 33 years old. I looked tired. When I stepped out into the hallway, Grant was there. He was leaning against the wall, checking his phone. When he saw me, he slid the phone into his pocket and straightened up. The charm was gone. His face was hard. "Having fun?" he asked. "It is a lovely dinner." "Grant, she seems intense." "She is brilliant," Grant corrected. "She is in a different league." "Allison, that is what I wanted to talk to you about." I waited. I knew this tone. This was the big brother tone, the one that meant I was doing something wrong. "Do not try too hard with her, okay?" he said. He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper. It felt conspiratorial, but the words were ice. "Rowan does not tolerate mediocrity. She cuts through bullshit for a living. If you start talking about your little startup and your grand visions of saving small businesses, she is going to tear you apart. Just keep it light. Talk about the weather. Talk about the food." I stared at him. The insult was so casual, so practiced. "My company is not bullshit, Grant," I said. He sighed, patting my shoulder. "I know you believe that, Allie, and that is sweet. But Rowan is playing a different game. She is serious people. Just do not embarrass yourself, or me." He flashed that smile again, the one that won clients and charmed investors, and walked back into the dining room. I stood there for a full minute, my heart hammering against my ribs. It was not the first time he had dismissed me, but there was something sharper about it tonight. He was afraid. He was afraid I would crack the perfect image he was presenting to this woman. When I returned to the table, the dynamic had shifted. Grant was deep in conversation with my father about tax shelters. My mother was busy inspecting the dessert menu. Rowan was alone in the conversation, her gaze drifting over the other tables. She looked at me as I sat down. "You look angry," she said. She did not whisper, but her voice was soft enough that the men did not hear. "I am not angry. I lied." Rowan tilted her head. You hold it in your jaw." I picked up my wine glass, taking a long sip. "Grant says you are observant." "Grant says a lot of things," Rowan said. She leaned forward slightly, resting her chin on her hand. "Tell me something. Allison, if you did not have to worry about rent, or payroll, or your brother's opinion, or the reputation of the Bailey name, what would you be doing?" The question caught me off guard. I looked at her, ready to give a deflection, a joke. But her eyes were waiting. They were demanding. "I would be doing exactly what I'm doing now," I said. The words came out faster than I intended. I would be running Brightmorrow, but I would be doing it louder. I would be screaming about how the banking system is rigged against the people who actually build this country. I would be tearing down the compliance walls that keep the rich rich and the poor stuck in paperwork. I would not be nice about it. I stopped, realizing I had raised my voice. My mother looked up from the menu, startled. Grant paused mid-sentence, his eyes narrowing at me. Rowan did not flinch. A tiny, almost imperceptible smile touched the corner of her mouth. "Good," she said. That was it. She turned back to her plate as if nothing had happened. Grant shot me a warning look, but I ignored him. For the rest of the dinner, I felt a strange vibration in my chest. I had told the truth, and the sky had not fallen. The next morning, I woke up with a headache that had nothing to do with champagne. It was the hangover of being a Bailey. I lay in bed in my one-bedroom apartment, listening to the sound of the neighbor's television through the thin walls. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I reached for it, squinting against the sunlight streaming through the blinds. It was an email. The subject line made me sit up. Invitation. Ledger line, under 30. Impact Founders List. I blinked. Ledgerline was a new media brand, trendy and aggressive, known for covering the intersection of business and social justice. But the under 30 part was a mistake. I was 33. I had aged out of the wunderkind bracket 3 years ago. I opened the email. Dear Allison Bailey, we have been following the work of Brightmorrow Labs with great interest, while our flagship list highlights founders under the age of 30. This year we are launching an expanded Impact Leaders vertical for founders who are disrupting legacy systems. We would like to consider you for a feature profile. Please let us know if you are available for a preliminary interview. Best, the editorial team. I frowned. It had to be spam, or a mistake. Brightmorrow was tiny. We had 12 employees and a client base that consisted mostly of family-owned hardware stores and independent contractors. We were not disruptors. We were survivors. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text message. The number was unknown. Check your email. Do not delete it. My thumbs hovered over the screen. Who is this? The 3 dots appeared instantly. Rowan, Grant gave me your number for the wedding coordination list. I would like to interview you properly, not as your brother's sister. I stared at the phone. The air in my bedroom suddenly felt very thin. Rowan Cade wanted to interview me? The woman who took down pharmaceutical giants? My first instinct was distinct and immediate. Distrust. I had been down this road before, 2 years ago. A local business blog had profiled me. I thought it was about my software. Instead, the headline had been, "The Bailey sister tries her hand at tech," and the article had spent 3 paragraphs discussing my father's charity work and Grant's promotion before mentioning my company's name. I was a prop. I was always a prop. I got out of bed and called Ben. Ben was my lead developer and the closest thing I had to a partner. He answered on the second ring, the sound of a keyboard clacking in the background. "It is Saturday. Allie," he said, "if the server is down, I am going to pretend I am in a tunnel. The server is fine." I said, I was pacing the length of my small living room. "I just got an email from Ledgerline. They want to interview me." "Ledgerline?" Ben stopped typing. "The ones who did that expose on the crypto guys? That is big. Allie, why do you sound like you are calling the police?" "Because Grant's fiancée is behind it." I said, "She just texted me. She wants to do the interview." There was a long silence on the other end. "The Pulitzer lady?" Ben asked. "Yes. Okay," Ben said slowly. "That is weird. Why would she want to interview her future sister-in-law?" "That is a conflict of interest, is it not?" "She says it is for an expanded list, impact leaders. But Ben, Grant told me specifically to not talk about work around her. He said I would embarrass him." Ben sighed. "Grant is a dick. We have established this. I know. But what if this is a trap? What if she just wants to write a fluff piece to make the family look good? Or worse, what if she wants to pick apart the company to show Grant how amateur I am? Or," Ben said, his voice practical, "maybe she realizes you are the only person in your family who actually works for a living." I stopped pacing. I wanted to believe that. I desperately wanted to believe that someone saw the value in what we were doing. But hope was a dangerous thing in my family. "Just be careful," Ben said. "If it feels like a PR stunt, walk away. We do not need their press. We are profitable. We are fine. We are barely profitable," I corrected. "We are ramen profitable," Ben said. "It counts." I hung up and looked at the text message again. "Not as your brother's sister." I typed a reply. "I am 33. The list is under 30. The response came back in seconds. "I know. Rules are boring. Are you free Tuesday?" I did not tell Grant. I knew I should have. I knew the protocol. Anything that involved the media went through him or my father. But for once, I wanted something to be mine. He found out anyway. It was Monday afternoon. I was at the office, a converted warehouse space in the industrial district that smelled faintly of roasted coffee and ozone. My phone rang. Grant's face appeared on the screen. He did not say hello. "Why did Rowan just ask me for your schedule?" he demanded. I closed my laptop and stepped into the hallway for privacy. "Hello to you too, Grant." Do not play games. Allison, she says she is interviewing you for Ledgerline. Did you agree to this? She asked. I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It is a good opportunity for Brightmorrow. It is a terrible idea. Grant snapped. His voice was tight, higher than usual. It lacked his boardroom composure. You do not know how these people work. They build you up just to tear you down. You are not ready for that kind of scrutiny. Allie, your financials are messy. Your client list is weak. She will shred you. She is your fiancée. Grant, I said, why would she shred me? Because she is a journalist first, he shouted. The volume shocked me. Grant never shouted. He manipulated. He cajoled. He did not shout. I pulled the phone away from my ear for a second. Grant, calm down. It is just a profile. You have to decline, he said. He was breathing hard. Tell her you are too busy. Tell her legal advised against it. I do not care what excuse you use. Just kill it. Why are you so afraid of this? I asked. I am not afraid, he said, his voice dropping to a hiss. I am protecting you. You are my little sister. I look out for you. That is what I do. You are acting like I'm going to commit a crime on the record. You do not get it, he said, and then he slipped. The polished veneer cracked. Just for a second. You do not want your name in their system. Allison, once you're in their database, you are tagged. You do not want that attention. Their system? I asked. You mean Ledgerline? He paused. The silence stretched out. Heavy and static. Just cancel it. Allison, for your own good. The line went dead. I stood in the hallway, staring at the phone. You do not want your name in their system. It was a strange turn of phrase. Ledgerline was a media company. Being in their system meant being in their archives. For a founder, that was the goal. Why was Grant terrified of me being searchable? I went back to my desk, but I could not focus. The code on my screen looked like gibberish. Grant's panic had been visceral. It wasn't just embarrassment. He had sounded cornered. That evening, I went to my parents' house for dinner. It was a standing Monday obligation. The house was a sprawling colonial in the heights of Larkhill, filled with antiques my mother collected and never touched. Grant was not there. He had texted my mother saying he was working late on a merger. I sat in the living room while my mother finished plating the roast. My father was in his study, taking a call. I wandered over to the mantelpiece. It was crowded with framed photos. Grant's graduation from Yale. Grant's first day at Marlowe Stratfield. Grant and my father on a sailboat. And, tucked in the corner, a picture of me holding my college diploma. Looking slightly out of focus, my eyes drifted to a larger frame in the center. It was a professional shot from a charity gala about 5 years ago. My father was in a tuxedo, shaking hands with a man I did not recognize. Grant was standing just behind them, smiling that golden smile. I had seen the photo 100 times, but I had never read the small brass plaque on the frame. Inaugural Gala. The North Pine Civic Trust, 2021. North Pine Civic Trust. The name triggered a faint memory, a check, a very important check. When I had started Brightmorrow 4 years ago, I was drowning. No bank would touch me. I had maxed out my credit cards, and then, miraculously, I had received a seed grant. It had come through a local business incubator. But the source of funds... I pulled out my phone. I typed North Pine Civic Trust into the search bar. I expected a website, a list of board members, a mission statement. The results page loaded. It was empty. There were 3 results. One was a PDF of a generic tax filing from 3 years ago. One was a mention in a municipal meeting minutes log regarding a zoning permit. And one was a broken link to a press release that resulted in a 404 error. That was it. For a charitable trust that threw black tie galas and handed out seed grants. It was invisible. It was too clean. Even small family foundations had a digital footprint. Donor lists, event photos, news articles. North Pine was a ghost. I looked back at the photo. My father looked so proud. Grant looked so assured. You do not want your name in their system. A cold prickle of unease started at the base of my neck. I zoomed in on the photo on the mantel, squinting at the man shaking my father's hand. He was older, silver-haired, with a face that looked carved from granite. He looked powerful. I looked at Grant in the background of the photo. He wasn't just smiling. He was looking at the older man with an expression I recognized. It was the same way he looked at his bosses. Deference. Calculated deference. "Dinner is ready," my mother called from the dining room. I slipped my phone into my pocket. My heart was beating a little too fast. I felt like I had just walked into a room I was not supposed to enter, and the door had clicked shut behind me. I went into the dining room. I sat in my usual chair, but as I unfolded my napkin, I made a decision. I was going to take the interview. I was going to meet Rowan Cade, and I was going to ask her exactly what kind of system my brother was so afraid of. The cafe Rowan chose was on the edge of the warehouse district, a place called the Press Room, where the coffee tasted like battery acid, and the tables were made of reclaimed industrial spools. It was not the kind of place a Bailey frequented. It was definitely not the kind of place where one would expect to find a woman who wore Italian silk and destroyed corporate reputations for a living. I arrived 10 minutes early, my laptop bag digging into my shoulder, my stomach turning over a slow rotation of anxiety. I had spent the last 24 hours rehearsing answers to questions I thought she might ask: revenue projections, user acquisition costs, the scalability of our fraud detection algorithm. I was ready to pitch. I was ready to prove that Brightmorrow was not just a cute hobby for the disappointment of the Bailey family. Rowan was already there. She was sitting at a corner table, her back to the wall, watching the door. There were no assistants, no dictaphones, no PR handlers, just her, a black coffee, and a small, leather-bound notebook lying open on the scratched wood. When she saw me, she did not smile, but she nodded, a sharp, downward tilt of her chin. I walked over, feeling distinctly like I was reporting to the principal's office. "You are early," she said. "I like to be prepared," I said, pulling out the metal chair opposite her. It scraped loudly against the concrete floor, a harsh shrieking sound that made half the cafe look up. I winced. Rowan did not flinch. She just watched me settle in, her gray eyes tracking my hands as I placed my phone on the table. "Screen down. Do you want something?" she asked. "The coffee is terrible, but the tea is safe." "I am fine," I said. She picked up a pen. It was a heavy silver thing that looked like it could double as a weapon. "Let us skip the preamble. Allison," she said. Her voice was low, cutting under the noise of the espresso machine. "I have read your pitch deck. I have read your financials from the public filing you did 2 years ago. I know what Brightmorrow does. You build compliance software for small businesses to help them detect internal fraud. It is unsexy, necessary work." I blinked. "Thank you?" "That was not a compliment," she said. "It is a fact. What I want to know is how you built it." I straightened my spine. "I bootstrapped it. I put in my own savings. I lived on ramen and panic for 18 months. Rowan made a small note in her book. "And the initial capital?" she asked without looking up. "The seed money. You needed servers. You needed a dev team. That costs more than savings." I hesitated. This was the part of the story I usually glossed over. Or rather, the part I polished until it shined. "I got a grant," I said. "A seed grant for female founders in the Midwest." "Which one?" "The North Pine Civic Trust," I said. The pen stopped moving. Rowan looked up. Her expression did not change, but the air around the table seemed to drop 5 degrees. "North Pine," she repeated. "Yes," I said, feeling a defensive edge creep into my voice. It was a miracle. Honestly, we were 2 weeks away from shutting down. I had maxed out every credit card I owned. Then this grant came through. $50,000. It saved us. "And who introduced you to the trust?" Rowan asked. I shrugged. "My brother." Grant knew I was struggling. He said he knew some people who supported local innovation. He made a few calls, got me a meeting with the director. "They loved the mission. They loved the mission," Rowan echoed. She sounded bored, or perhaps disappointed. I leaned forward. "Look, I know what you are thinking. You think it is just nepotism. Rich brother helps screw up sister get free money. But we had to qualify. Rowan, we had to submit a business plan. We had to show impact metrics. It was legitimate. Rowan closed her notebook. She placed her hands flat on the table. Allison, she said, I am not writing a profile on an up-and-coming female founder. I froze. Then what are you doing? I am investigating a philanthropic pipeline that moves dark money through civic trusts into private consulting contracts. She said it casually, like she was discussing the weather. I stared at her. I do not understand. Ledgerline has been tracking the North Pine Civic Trust for 8 months. She said, it is a shell. Allison. It takes donations from corporate entities that need tax write-offs, funnels them into grants for specific, curated recipients, and then, usually within 2 years, those recipients end up hiring a specific set of consulting firms. The money goes in a circle. It looks like charity. It acts like money laundering. My mouth felt dry. That is ridiculous. I got $50,000. I never hired any consultants. I used it for payroll. Rowan watched me. Are you sure? Yes, I am sure, I snapped. I run a tight ship. We do not have money for consultants. Rowan opened the notebook again. She flipped back 3 pages. Who handles your banking compliance audits? She asked. We use a third-party service, I said. Stratfield Solutions. And who owns Stratfield Solutions? I do not know. I said, it is a vendor. They were recommended by... I trailed off. They were recommended by the grant committee. I whispered. Rowan nodded. Stratfield Solutions is a subsidiary of Marlowe Stratfield Partners, the firm where your brother is a senior partner. The noise of the cafe seemed to roar in my ears, then fade into a distant hum. Marlowe Stratfield. Grant's firm. I shook my head. No, that is a coincidence. Grant would not funnel money to himself through me. That is insane. It is $50,000. Grant makes that in a month. Why would he risk his career for pennies? It is not about the money, Rowan said. It is about the network. It is about creating a web of legitimate businesses, like yours, that validate the trust. You are the cover. Allison, you are the success story they put on the website so nobody looks at the other 90% of the funds that vanish into offshore accounts. I felt a flush of heat rise up my neck. Anger. Pure, hot anger. My company is not a cover, I hissed. Bright Morrow is real. We stopped $400,000 in fraud for our clients last year. We saved a family hardware store in Dayton from bankruptcy because their bookkeeper was skimming off the top. My work matters. I know it does, Rowan said. Her voice softened. Just a fraction. That is why it works. If you were a scam, it would be too obvious. Good work can be used as camouflage. Allison. I stood up. My chair scraped the floor again. Louder this time. I am done. I said, I do not know what you are trying to do. Rowan. Maybe you hate Grant. Maybe you are trying to blow up your own wedding for some twisted journalist glory. But do not drag my work into it. I built this. Me. Not Grant. Not North Pine. Me. I grabbed my bag. Sit down. Rowan said. I am leaving. I have the email, she said. I stopped. My hand was on the strap of my bag. What email? Rowan reached into her own bag, a slim, nondescript tote, and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She slid it across the table. I looked down. It was a photocopy of an email printout. The header showed it was from the internal server of the North Pine Civic Trust, dated 4 years ago. Subject: Candidate selection, Q3 cycle. From Director, NCT. 2. Redacted, regarding the Bailey application. The brother assures us she is manageable. The business model is dull but optically perfect. Low-risk recipient. Proceed with the 50 allocation. I stared at the words. Manageable, dull, low-risk recipient. The words burned into my retinas. I had spent my whole life trying to be exciting, trying to be sharp, trying to prove I was not just the safe, quiet Bailey. And here it was, in black and white. They had chosen me because I was safe, because I was dull. Grant had assured them I was manageable. I sat back down. I felt hollowed out, like someone had reached inside my chest and scooped out all the air. He told them I was dull. I said. My voice sounded small. He told them you were safe. Rowan corrected. There is a difference. Why are you showing me this? I asked, looking up at her. To hurt me? To wake you up, she said. She took the paper back and folded it neatly. Allison, I am going to write this story, whether you help me or not. The story is coming out. If you are not a source, you are a subject, and if you are a subject, you look like an accomplice. I am not an accomplice. I said, I did not know. Ignorance is not a defense in the court of public opinion. Rowan said, and it certainly is not a defense in a federal inquiry, which is where this is heading. Federal? I choked out. Rowan took a sip of her coffee. Her face was impassive. I want to interview you on the record. I want you to walk me through the funding process. I want you to give me the documents you signed. If you do that, I can contextualize your involvement. I can show that you were used, and if I do not, then you are just another beneficiary of the North Pine Slush Fund. She said, and when the house of cards falls, you will be under it. I looked at her, really looked at her. She was terrifying. She was sitting there, discussing the destruction of my family and my career, and she had not even raised her pulse. Why are you marrying him? I asked. The question just slipped out. If he is part of this, why are you marrying him? Rowan paused. For the first time, she looked away. She looked out the window, at the gray street. Because he was not always like this, she said. Or maybe because I need to know how deep the rot goes before I cut it out. She turned back to me. Her eyes were hard again. Think about it. Allison, you have 24 hours before I file my preliminary request for comment from North Pine. Once I do that, the walls go up. I drove back to the office in a daze. The city of Larkhill looked different through the windshield. The gleaming glass towers of downtown, where Grant worked, suddenly looked like fortifications. The clean streets, the manicured parks, it all felt like a set piece, a facade built to hide something rotting underneath. When I got to the Bright Morrow office, the mood was light. Ben was playing loud hip-hop on the speakers. Sarah, our customer success manager, was laughing on the phone with a client. Hey, boss, Ben called out. How was the big interview? Did we make the list? I walked past him, heading straight for my office. It went fine. I said, just lots of questions. I shut the door and collapsed into my chair. I stared at the whiteboard on the wall, covered in diagrams of our new feature rollout. Manageable, dull. I felt sick. A knock on the door made me jump. Allison? I looked up. It was Grant. He was standing in the doorway of my office. Grant never came to my office. He called it the bunker. He said it depressed him. But here he was, holding a cardboard carrier with 2 coffees from the expensive roastery downtown. He was wearing his casual Friday look, cashmere sweater, dark denim, even though it was Tuesday. Grant, I said, what are you doing here? I was in the neighborhood, he said, stepping inside. He looked around, his nose wrinkling slightly at the exposed ductwork. I brought a peace offering. He set a latte on my desk. Oat milk, extra foam, just how you like it. I looked at the coffee. It was perfect, thoughtful. Thanks, I said. He sat down in the visitor chair. Crossing his legs, he looked relaxed, too relaxed. Look, Allie, he said, I wanted to apologize. For yesterday, I was intense on the phone. You were frantic. I said. He laughed. A short, self-deprecating sound. Yeah, maybe. I am just stressed. The merger. The wedding. I took it out on you. I am sorry. I watched him. He was doing the thing he always did, making himself vulnerable so I would comfort him. It was a reflex for me. I wanted to say, it is okay. Grant, I get it. But then I saw the email in my head. The brother assures us she is manageable. Why were you so worried about Ledgerline? I asked. He waved a hand. I was not worried about them. I was worried about you. I know how much this company means to you. I did not want you to get your hopes up for some list that is just going to exploit you for clicks. He leaned forward. his face earnest. Actually, I have been thinking. You are right. You need bigger investors. Real money. I have a friend at Hightower Capital. They are looking for female-led tech plays. I want to introduce you. I stared at him. Hightower Capital was huge. Grant had told me for 3 years that I was too early for Hightower. Now, I asked, you want to introduce me now? You are ready, he said. You have proven you can stick it out. Let me set up a meeting. Next week. We can get you a real valuation. Get you out of this warehouse. It was a bribe. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. He was offering me the golden ticket. The validation I had craved from him my entire life, and he was offering it now. The day after Rowan contacted me, he was trying to buy my silence, or my distraction. He did not know I had seen the email. He did not know Rowan had shown me the man behind the curtain. That sounds great. Grant, I said. I forced a smile. It felt like stretching rubber. Good, he said. He stood up, looking relieved. He patted the desk. We will make it happen. Just focus on the business, okay? Do not get distracted by the noise. She is on a crusade right now. She gets like this. Tunnel vision. Just nod and smile and let her do her thing. She will move on to the next target in a month. He walked to the door. Love you. Allie, he said. Love you too, I said. When he left, I did not drink the coffee. I poured it into the trash can. It smelled like betrayal. That night, my mother called. Grant says he visited you, she said. She sounded happy. He says he is going to help you with funding. Isn't that wonderful? Yes. Mom, I said, holding the phone between my shoulder and ear while I washed dishes. It is great. I am so glad you two are getting along. She said, I was worried. You seemed so prickly at the dinner. I was not prickly. I said, I was just being myself. Well, try to be a softer version of yourself for the wedding, she said. This is a big moment for the family. Allison, the Cades are an important family. We need to show them we belong. I scrubbed a plate harder than necessary. Is that what this is about? Belonging? It is about stability. She said, Grant has worked so hard to get us here. Do not overthink things. Allison, and please, do not complicate it with ambition. You have your little company, and that is fine. But Grant is building a legacy. Just let him shine for once. For once? I wanted to scream. When has Grant ever not shined? When have I ever been anything other than the shadow? Okay, Mom, I said. I have to go. I hung up. I felt trapped. My family was a closed loop, a system designed to funnel all energy and resources toward Grant, and I was just a spare part, kept around for spare change. Wednesday morning. The bomb dropped. I walked into the office to find Ben standing at my desk. He looked pale. What is it? I asked. Did the server crash? Worse. He said. He handed me a letter. It was on heavy, cream-colored paper. The logo at the top was our bank. First Larkhill Commercial. Dear Ms. Bailey, this letter is to inform you that your business accounts with First Larkhill Commercial are currently under administrative review due to flagged compliance concerns regarding source of funds. Effective immediately. All outgoing transfers, including payroll and vendor payments, are frozen pending the completion of this review. This process may take up to 30 days. We apologize for the inconvenience. I read the letter twice. My hands started to shake. Frozen? I said. Payroll is Friday. I know, Ben said. I called them. The rep said she could not give me any details. She just said it was a risk algorithm flag. Risk algorithm, low-risk recipient. I sank into my chair. This was not a coincidence. Rowan had said I had 24 hours. Grant had offered me money, and now my own money was frozen. It was a squeeze, a warning shot. They were showing me how easily they could turn off the lights. How much do we have in petty cash? I asked. Ben laughed. A hollow sound. $400. Allie, if we miss payroll, the developers walk. You know the market. They will have offers by Monday. I know. I said. I grabbed my phone. I did not call the bank. I called Grant. It went to voicemail. "You have reached Grant Bailey. Leave a message." "Grant," I said. My voice was trembling with rage. "My bank accounts just got frozen. Call me back. Now." I hung up. I stared at the phone. He wasn't going to call back. This was the punishment. I had met with Rowan. I hadn't declined the interview fast enough. So now, the machine was eating me. My phone buzzed. I looked at it, expecting Grant. It was Rowan. "Meet me at the clinic on 4th. Suite 202. I stared at the message. How did she know? I grabbed my coat. "Handle it." "Ben," I said, "tell the team it is a glitch. Tell them I am fixing it." The address was a rundown office building near the courthouse. Suite 202 had a frosted glass door with stenciled letters, Larkhill Small Business Legal Aid. I pushed the door open. The waiting room was crowded with people holding manila folders, looking tired and anxious. Rowan was standing by the reception desk, talking to a woman in a cardigan. When she saw me, she waved me over. "This is Elena," Rowan said. "She is the best banking litigation attorney in the state. She usually sues payday lenders, but she loves a good compliance fight." Elena extended a hand. "Rowan says you are being squeezed. They froze payroll." I said, my voice broke, "I have 12 employees. They have rent to pay." Elena nodded. "Typical. It is called a soft freeze. They do not accuse you of a crime. They just pause you until you suffocate. Give me the letter." I handed her the letter. She scanned it. "First Larkhill," she muttered. "They are skittish. I can draft an emergency injunction. We can argue irreparable harm. I can get a judge to sign it by tomorrow morning if we move fast." "Thank you." I breathed. "I can't pay you right now. My accounts are—" Rowan cut in. "It is pro bono." "Allison." I looked at Rowan. She was wearing a trench coat, looking completely out of place in the fluorescent-lit clinic. "Why?" I asked. "Because I do not want you dependent on me," she said. "If I paid your payroll, you would owe me. If I get you a lawyer, you owe the truth." She steered me toward a quiet corner of the waiting room. "Did you get the letter today?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Just now." "Grant knew," she said. "It wasn't a question." I nodded. "He offered to introduce me to investors yesterday. He tried to get me to focus on the future. He knew the present was about to implode." Rowan's eyes were cold. "He is terrified." "Allison, he is embarrassed." I said, "He thinks I am a screw-up." "No," she said. She leaned in close, her voice a harsh whisper. "He is not embarrassed. If he were embarrassed, he would pay your payroll himself to keep you quiet. He's not doing that. He is letting you drown. Why? Because he is afraid of what you will find if you keep digging," she said. "He does not just want you quiet. He wants you gone. He wants Bright Morrow to cease to exist so the paper trail disappears." I felt a chill go through me that had nothing to do with the drafty room. "My brother loves me," I said. It was a weak protest. "Your brother loves the version of you that makes him look like a savior," Rowan said. "But you are not that version anymore. You are a liability." She pulled a card out of her pocket. "Elena will handle the bank. But you need to handle the grant. I need those documents. Allison, the original application, the emails, everything you have from North Pine." I looked at the card. Then I looked at Rowan. "If I give them to you," I said, "do you promise? Do you promise not to destroy him unless you have to?" Rowan looked at me. There was no pity in her eyes, only a terrifying clarity. "I promise to write the truth," she said. "If the truth destroys him, that is his doing, not mine." I took the card. "I will look for the files." I said. "Good," Rowan said. She turned to leave, then paused. "And Allison?" "Yes? Change your passwords. All of them." She walked out the door, her heels clicking on the linoleum. I watched her go, feeling the weight of the decision I had just made. I had just aligned myself with the enemy, but as I looked down at the letter from the bank, the letter that threatened to starve my team and kill my dream, I realized something. Rowan was not the enemy. The enemy was the person who had smiled at me yesterday, handed me a coffee, and told me he loved me, all while knowing the executioner was already on the way. I turned back to Elena. "Where do I sign?" I asked. "The digital footprint of $50,000 is surprisingly hard to erase if you know where to look." I sat on the floor of my living room, surrounded by stacks of paper. I had printed everything: bank statements from 4 years ago, tax filings, email chains that I had archived and forgotten. My laptop screen glowed with the blue light of the Secretary of State's business entity search portal. Elena, the lawyer Rowan had introduced me to, had bought us some breathing room with the bank. The payroll freeze was lifted for 48 hours while they reviewed our compliance documentation. It was a temporary tourniquet on a severing artery, but it gave me time. I traced the deposit that had saved Brightmorrow. On my bank statement, it was listed simply as wire transfer, NCT, grant allocation. But when I dug into the transaction details, requesting the full routing history from the bank's automated archive, the path was not a straight line from the North Pine Civic Trust to me. It was a zigzag. The money had originated from North Pine. Then it had moved to an entity called the Metro Growth Initiative. From there, it went to Zenith Strategic Partners, and Zenith Strategic Partners shared a registered agent address with a company called MSP Holdings. I typed MSP Holdings into the search bar. Marlowe Stratfield Partners, my brother's firm. I sat back against the sofa, feeling the blood drain from my face. The money had not been a grant. It had been a loop. Grant's firm had effectively paid me, washing the money through 2 shell companies to make it look like philanthropy. Why? If Grant wanted to give me money, he could have just written a check. He had offered to loan me money a dozen times. Why go through this elaborate charade of applications, committees, and approval letters, unless the point was not the money, unless the point was the label, grant recipient, civic success story? I needed to talk to him, but I could not ask him directly. If Rowan was right, Grant was already spooked. If I cornered him, he would shut down. I had to test the waters. I picked up my phone and dialed his number. It was late, almost 10 in the evening. He answered on the first ring. "Allie? Is everything okay?" His voice was warm, concerned. It was the voice of the brother who used to check under my bed for monsters. It made my stomach turn. "I am fine, Grant," I said, keeping my voice light. "I'm just going through some old paperwork for the bank review. You know, dotting the I's." "Good," he said. "Just give them what they want. It will blow over." I traced the pattern of the rug with my finger. "Hey, I had a question. Do you remember when I got the North Pine grant? You were so adamant that I should not publicize the specific amount. You said it was unseemly to talk about numbers." There was a pause, a beat of silence that lasted just a second too long. "I remember," he said. His tone had shifted. It was tighter. "Why?" "I was just wondering why." I said, "I am looking at the agreement now, and there is no confidentiality clause. Most startups shout their seed funding from the rooftops. Why did you want me to be so quiet about it?" "Allison," he said, and there it was. The snap. The patience evaporated. "Why are you digging up ancient history? I am just curious." "Grant, you are not curious. You are spinning," he said. "You are doing that thing you do where you obsess over details that do not matter because you are panicked about the big picture. You are being paranoid." Allie, paranoid. The word hit me like a physical slap. He had used that word when we were kids. When I told our parents I thought he had read my diary, "She is just paranoid." Mom, when I suspected he had told his friends about my crush, "You are paranoid." Allie, it was his favorite weapon. It delegitimized my reality before I could even speak it. "I am not being paranoid." I said, my grip tightening on the phone. "I just found it odd that the money routed through Zenith Partners. Isn't that a vendor for your firm?" The silence this time was heavy. "It is a standard clearinghouse." "Allison," he said. His voice was cold, clipped. "It is how large trusts manage liquidity. Do not read into things you do not understand. You are a coder, not a forensic accountant. Stick to what you know." He hung up. He did not say goodbye. He just cut the line. I stared at the phone. He hadn't denied it. He hadn't explained it. He had attacked me for noticing it. My phone buzzed again almost immediately. It was not Grant. It was Rowan. Part 2. Tomorrow morning, my apartment. On the record. Rowan's apartment was exactly what I expected. Beautiful, expensive, and completely devoid of warmth. It was in the Arts District, a loft with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline. The furniture was white and angular. There were no personal photos, no clutter. It looked like a showroom for a life, not a place where someone actually lived. She made me tea. She used loose leaf, measuring it out with a scale. "Thank you for coming," she said, setting the cup down on a glass coaster. I did not have much of a choice. I said, "You have the documents now." Elena sent them over. I reviewed them. Rowan said. She sat opposite me, activating a small digital recorder on the table. "This is on the record. Allison, is that acceptable?" I nodded. "Yes. State your name and title for the tape." "Allison Bailey, founder and CEO of Bright Morrow Labs." Rowan leaned back. She did not look at her notes. She looked at me. "Yesterday, we talked about the mechanics of the fraud," she said. "Today, I want to talk about the mechanics of the family." I stiffened. I thought this was about the money. The money follows the relationships. Rowan said, "Tell me, Allison, what is it like to be the Bailey who is always explained away?" I looked at the recorder. The little red light blinked steadily. "I do not know what you mean." I said, "I think you do." She said gently, "I have watched your family. Grant is the son. Your parents orbit him. And you? You are the apology." "Oh, Allison is trying her hand at a startup. Allison is finding herself. They speak about you as if you are a temporary condition that needs to be managed." I felt a lump form in my throat. It was a cruel observation, but it was accurate. Grant is successful. I said, "He followed the path." I went off-road. "It makes them nervous. It makes them useful." Rowan corrected. "What?" "Grant needs you to be the screw-up." "Allison," I frowned. "That is not true. He helps me. He got me the grant. He tries to help me with investors. He helps you just enough to keep you indebted, but not enough to let you succeed." Rowan said, "If you succeed, really succeed, on your own terms, you do not need him. And if you do not need him, you might start asking questions, like you did yesterday." "How do you know I asked questions?" I asked sharply, "Because Grant called me last night." She said, "He asked if I had been putting crazy ideas in your head. He said you were having an episode, that you were paranoid." I looked down at my tea. The steam was rising in a thin gray ribbon. "He has called me paranoid since I was 6. I said softly. Rowan nodded. "It is a powerful word. It makes your instincts look like illness." She leaned forward. "Allison, I need you to understand something. I am going to expose North Pine. I am going to expose Marlowe Stratfield. Grant is going to be collateral damage. But you do not have to be." I looked up at her. "I will answer your questions. Rowan, I will tell you how the grant worked. I will tell you about the emails. But I will not be used to punish him. I am not doing this for revenge. I am doing it because I want my company to be clean." Rowan studied me. Her expression softened. "Just a fraction." "Fair enough," she said. "Let us talk about the compliance reports you filed in 2022. The family brunch on Sunday was mandatory. My mother had sent 3 reminder texts. It was being held at the Lark Hill Country Club, a place that smelled of old money and lemon polish. I walked in feeling like I was wearing a wire. Even though I wasn't, I saw them on the terrace. Grant was wearing a polo shirt, looking relaxed, sunglasses perched on his head. Rowan was next to him, wearing a sundress that looked simple but probably cost more than my car. My parents were beaming. "There she is," my father called out. "The entrepreneur." Grant stood up and kissed my cheek. He did not mention our phone call. He acted as if it had never happened. "You look tired, Allie," he said. "Rough week?" "You could say that," I said, taking my seat. We ordered mimosas. The conversation flowed in its usual river. Golf scores, property values, the upcoming wedding. Speaking of the wedding, Grant said, resting his hand on Rowan's arm, we were thinking of moving the date up. My mother gasped. Really? But the venue? I can pull some strings, Grant said, smiling at Rowan. Why wait? We know what we want. I was thinking next month, a smaller ceremony, just close friends and family. Rowan sipped her water. She did not look at Grant. She looked at the view of the golf course. It is a romantic idea, she said. Her voice was neutral. I watched them. Grant's hand was gripping her arm just a little too tightly. It wasn't romance. It was a lockdown. If they were married, spousal privilege kicked in. If they were married, she was legally bound to him in ways that made reporting on him infinitely more complicated. So, Grant, Rowan said. Turning to him, she had a way of cutting through the noise without raising her voice. I was telling my editor about your civic work the other day. He was asking what North Pine actually does. Beyond the galas, the table went quiet. My father paused with his fork halfway to his mouth. Grant didn't blink. We build capacity, he said smoothly. It is about strengthening the civic fabric. We identify key community assets, like Allison, and we provide the resources they need to scale. It is venture philanthropy. Rowan nodded slowly. Capacity building. That is a lovely phrase. But what are the metrics? How do you measure the fabric? Grant laughed. It was a dismissive sound. You journalists, always looking for a spreadsheet. You cannot measure impact in numbers. Rowan, you measure it in stories, in lives changed. He gestured to me. Look at Allison. North Pine believed in her when the banks didn't. That is the metric. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. I was the prop again, the human shield. Actually, I said, clearing my throat, the banks didn't believe in me because my revenue model was unproven. North Pine didn't care about my revenue model. They just cared that I was your sister. Grant's smile froze. My mother looked horrified. Allison, my mother hissed. It is true, I said. I was a low-risk recipient. That is what the internal email said. Right? I looked at Grant. His eyes were hard. Flat stones. We are not talking business at brunch, he said. His voice was final. Rowan watched him. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. She had just seen him hide behind a slogan and then hide behind me. Her eyes narrowed, almost imperceptibly. She was cataloging the fear behind his polish. The text message came on Monday morning from an encrypted signal number. Meet me at the Arboretum, the Japanese garden, 2 p.m. I used to work for Marlowe Stratfield. I told Ben I had a dentist appointment. The Arboretum was quiet on a Monday. I walked the gravel paths until I reached the Japanese garden. A man was sitting on a bench near the koi pond. He was older, maybe 50, wearing a rumpled windbreaker and a baseball cap pulled low. Are you Allison? He asked as I approached. Yes. Sit down. Do not look at me. Look at the fish. I sat. I felt ridiculous. Like I was in a bad spy movie. Who are you? Call me Miller, he said. I was a senior analyst at Marlowe for 10 years. I left 6 months ago. Why did you contact me? Because I saw your name on the Ledger Line rumor mill, he said. And because I know your brother. What about him? I asked. Grant Bailey is not just an account manager. Allison. Internally, we called him the relationship closer. I watched a large orange koi surface. Gasping for air. What does that mean? It means he is the guy they send in when they need to bind someone to the firm. Miller said, he finds the vulnerability, the ego, the debt, the ambition, and he fills it. He makes the client feel like Marlowe Stratfield is the only thing keeping them alive. He shifted on the bench. North Pine is just a lead generation tool. They give out these grants to create a stable of indebted narrators. Narrators? I asked. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a manila folder. He slid it across the bench to me. Read this. Do not show it to anyone, especially not that fiancé of his. If she prints this, they will sue her into the ground. And me with her. He stood up. Wait, I said, why are you helping me? He looked down at me. He looked tired. "Because your brother ruined my life," he said. "He closed me. He found my vulnerability, my gambling debts, and he used them to make me sign off on audits that were lies. I lost my license because of him. Do not let him close you. Allison." He walked away, disappearing into the rhododendrons. I opened the folder. It was a collection of meeting minutes from the Marlowe Stratfield Executive Committee. Dated 3 years ago, I scanned the pages until my eyes caught a heading. Strategic Asset Management. Preferred Narrators. It was a list. A table of names. Category: Media. Category: Nonprofit. Category: Founders. Underfounders. There was my name, Allison Bailey, Bright Morrow. Next to my name were notes: status, active, leverage, familial/financial, risk, low, utility, validation of small-cap investment strategy, optical cover for Zenith transfers, optical cover. I was not a business. I was a billboard. I was a piece of scenery they erected to hide the money moving behind me. And next to the media category, there was a new entry, penciled in recently: Rowan Cade, status, pending acquisition, leverage, romantic/reputational, risk, high/volatile, utility, credibility, shield. I closed the folder. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the paper. Grant wasn't marrying Rowan because he loved her. He was acquiring her. He was trying to turn a Pulitzer finalist into a credibility shield. He thought if he married her, he could neutralize her, or better yet, use her reputation to sanitize his own. He was a monster, not a violent one, a corporate one, a man who saw human beings as line items on a spreadsheet of risk and utility. I went back to the office, but I could not work. I sat in my bunker, staring at the folder. My board meeting was at 4. We met over video conference. There were 3 of them: Greg, a local real estate developer, Susan, a retired banker, and Mike, an angel investor from Chicago. "I need to tell you something," I said. "Bright Morrow is going to be mentioned in an investigative piece by Ledgerline. It is about the North Pine Civic Trust." The faces on the screen shifted. Greg looked away. Susan took off her glasses. "Is it negative?" Mike asked. "It is complicated," I said. "It alleges that North Pine is a shell, and since they were our first investor—" "I know," Greg said. I stopped. "You know?" Greg sighed. "Allison, why do you think I joined your board? You had no revenue. You had a buggy beta product. I joined because Grant told me North Pine was backing you. North Pine is a kingmaker in this town. If they were in, I wanted to be in. It opens doors." I felt a cold sensation in my stomach. Even my board, even the people I thought believed in me, they were just following the signal Grant had created. "If this story breaks," Greg continued, his voice tight, "it is going to be messy. I have a reputation. Allison, I cannot be associated with a fraud investigation." "Are you resigning?" I asked. "I am suggesting you kill the story." Greg said, "Talk to your brother. Talk to the girl. Make it go away. If you don't, well, we have a fiduciary duty to protect our own interests." The screen went dark as Greg logged off. Then Susan, then Mike. I was alone in the office. I looked at the whiteboard where I had mapped out our 5-year plan. It looked childish now. "What is your way?" "I want to see the rest," I said. "I want to see the emails you have. I want to see the trail. I am not just a source. I need to know the whole truth. If I am going to burn my family down, I need to be the one holding the match." There was a pause. "Come to the newsroom," Rowan said. "I will get you a guest pass." I grabbed my coat. I grabbed the folder. And for the first time in my life, I walked out of the door not as Grant's sister, but as a woman who was about to start a war. The coordination with Rowan happened in the margins of the day. We met in parking garages, in the back booths of diners 2 towns over, and once in the muffled quiet of the public library's reference section. It felt less like a journalistic collaboration and more like a hostage exchange. I brought documents, bank statements, grant letters, emails from my personal archive. And Rowan brought strategy. We had an agreement. I would give her the map of the money, and she would protect the collateral damage. She promised that my personal vulnerabilities, my credit card debt from the early days, my brief period of therapy after the company almost folded in 2023, would stay out of the copy. I am not here to flay you. Allison, she told me, sliding a folder of photocopies into her bag, I am here to dismantle the machine that built the cage you are living in. It was during one of these late-night document reviews that I found the clause. I was sitting on the floor of my apartment, highlighting the dense legalese of the original North Pine grant agreement. I had signed it 4 years ago in a haze of gratitude and desperation. I had skimmed it then. You do not read the fine print when someone throws you a life preserver. You just grab the rope. But now, reading with the cold, cynical eyes Rowan had given me, Clause 14b jumped off the page. Informational cooperation and audit rights. The grantee agrees to provide the North Pine Civic Trust with full access to internal financial data, vendor lists, and banking records upon request for the purpose of longitudinal impact evaluation. Furthermore, the grantee authorizes the trust to communicate directly with financial institutions regarding the grantee's compliance status. I read it 3 times. Communicate directly with financial institutions. The blood drained from my face. The bank freeze. The sudden risk algorithm flag that had paralyzed my payroll earlier that week. It was not a glitch. It was not random. I had given them permission. I had signed a document that effectively gave North Pine a kill switch on my company. If I stepped out of line, if I became a high-risk narrator, they didn't need to sue me. They just had to call my bank, cite Clause 14b and suggest a compliance review. My phone rang. It was an unknown number. Ms. Bailey? A smooth baritone voice asked. This is Julian Vance. I am the Director of Donor Relations at the North Pine Civic Trust. I felt a spike of adrenaline. I had never spoken to Julian Vance. I had dealt with junior program officers. Hello, I said, keeping my voice steady. We have been reviewing our portfolio, Julian said. He sounded pleasant, like a concierge offering a room upgrade, and we noticed some irregularities in the reporting from Bright Morrow Labs. Nothing alarming, I am sure. But given the sensitivity of the current climate, I thought it would be best if we sat down. Just a friendly check-in. The threat was wrapped in so much silk I almost missed it. Sensitivity of the current climate. He meant Rowan. He meant the rumors. I am very busy. Mr. Vance, I said. Of course, he said. But Clause 14b does require an annual review. We would hate to have to escalate the non-compliance notification to your other creditors. Perhaps tomorrow at 10? At our offices? He knew. He knew I had read the clause. He was pulling the leash. I will be there, I said. The offices of the North Pine Civic Trust were located on the top floor of the Lark Hill Tower. The lobby was all glass and white marble. Designed to look transparent while hiding everything, Julian Vance was waiting for me in a conference room that overlooked the city. He was a man in his 50s, wearing a suit that cost more than my entire payroll. He had a smile that did not reach his eyes. Coffee? He offered, gesturing to a silver service on the sideboard. No, thank you, I said. I sat down, placing my bag on the floor. I wanted to look relaxed, but my hands were shaking in my lap. Julian sat opposite me. He folded his hands on the table. Allison, he said. Can I call you Allison? We are all family here. Ms. Bailey is fine, I said. Ms. Bailey, he sighed, looking pained. We are concerned. We have heard rumors that you have been distressed, that the pressure of running the company has been getting to you, that you have been making erratic statements to third parties. I stared at him. Erratic statements? We understand, he continued smoothly. Founder burnout is very real, and when you are under that kind of stress, you can become vulnerable to manipulation, to people who want to use your story for their own agenda. He was talking about Rowan. He was framing my cooperation with her as a mental health crisis. I am not burnt out. Mr. Vance, I said, and I am not being manipulated. I am asking questions about why my grant was routed through a consulting firm's shell company. Julian's smile tightened. That is a very complex financial structure. Ms. Bailey, it is standard for tax efficiency, but for someone without a background in high finance, I can see how it might look confusing. That is what I mean about the stress. You are seeing ghosts where there are only accountants. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a sleek, black envelope. We want to help, he said. We have prepared an addendum to your grant. It provides an additional $50,000 in operational support to help with the bank issues. All you need to do is sign a reaffirmation of our privacy standards. It was hush money. I looked at the envelope. If I signed it, the bank freeze would vanish. My employees would get paid. The nightmare would end. All I had to do was go back to sleep. I began. The door to the conference room opened. I turned. Grant walked in. He wasn't wearing his suit jacket. His sleeves were rolled up. He looked breathless, concerned. He looked like the perfect brother rushing to the scene of an accident. Allie. He breathed. Thank God. He crossed the room in 3 strides and put his hand on my shoulder. It was heavy. It felt like a restraint. Grant? I said. What are you doing here? Julian called me, Grant said, looking at me with deep, sorrowful eyes. He told me you were here. He told me you were spiraling. I am not spiraling, I said, trying to shrug off his hand. Shh, he soothed. He looked at Julian. I am so sorry. Julian, she has been under incredible strain. The startup, the wedding. It is too much. She is not herself. He was doing it. He was rewriting reality in real time. He was painting me as the hysterical woman, the fragile little sister who couldn't be trusted with her own voice. I stood up. Stop it. Grant, I said, I am not overwhelmed. I am the CEO of a solvent company. And I am here because this man threatened my bank accounts. Grant looked at Julian, then back at me. He smiled. A sad, patronizing smile. See? He said to Julian. She is paranoid. She thinks everyone is threatening her. It is the stress. He turned to me, gripping my upper arms. Allie, listen to me. You are making a scene. You are embarrassing yourself. Just let me handle this. I will talk to Julian. We will fix the bank thing. You just go home. Go rest. Take a pill. Take a pill. The rage that hit me was cold and absolute. He wasn't protecting me. He was neutralizing me. He was invalidating my testimony before I had even given it. If I spoke out later, he would point to this moment. Poor Allison. She had a breakdown in 2026. She was delusional. I looked at his hands on my arms. Take your hands off me, Grant, I said. He blinked, surprised by the tone. Allison, I said, take your hands off me. I stepped back. I looked at Julian, who was watching with the detached interest of a man watching a play. I am not signing your addendum, I said, and I am not accepting your narrative. If my bank accounts are not unfrozen by 5 o'clock today, my lawyer will file an injunction citing Clause 14b as an instrument of coercion, and she will attach the email chain where you discussed my manageability. Julian's face went still. Grant stepped forward. Allison, you do not have a lawyer. You can't afford a lawyer. I looked at my brother. I looked at the golden boy who had spent 33 years casting a shadow so big I thought it was night. You would be surprised what I can afford. Grant, I said. I picked up my bag and walked out. I did not run. I did not cry. I walked to the elevator, pressed the button, and waited. As the doors closed, I saw Grant standing in the conference room window, staring at me. He didn't look sad anymore. He looked afraid. I went straight to Rowan. We met in a park on the edge of the river, sitting on a bench watching the barges drift by. I told her everything. The meeting, the bribe, the way Grant had tried to diagnose me into silence. Rowan listened, her eyes fixed on the gray water. She didn't take notes this time. He is terrified, she said softly. He is not terrified, I said, kicking a pebble. He is arrogant. He thinks he can script my life. No, Rowan said. She turned to me. Allison, you have to understand something about men like Grant, men like Julian Vance. They live in a world where everything can be fixed with a phone call, a check, or a handshake. They believe the system works because the system works for them. When someone like you, someone they view as a subordinate, stops following the script, it does not just annoy them, it shatters their worldview. It means they are not gods. It means they are just men committing crimes in nice suits. She took a breath. My career was built on this. She said, I do not care about the drug dealers or the bank robbers. I care about the polite institutions, the ones that hide harm behind etiquette, the ones that crush people while smiling and asking about their families. That is what North Pine is. That is what Grant is. I looked at her. Her profile was sharp, beautiful, and terrifyingly lonely. Did you ever love him? I asked. Rowan paused. I thought I did, she said. In the beginning. He was charming. He was passionate about civic reform. But then what? Then I found his notes. She said, I froze. What notes? About 6 months ago. I borrowed his iPad. I was looking for a recipe. I found a folder titled Project Cade. I felt a chill. Project Cade. It wasn't a wedding folder. Rowan said, it was a dossier, on me. He had mapped out my career trajectory. He had analyzed my reporting history. There was a memo he wrote to himself, or maybe to someone else. It said, Acquisition of R.C. ensures permanent immunity from investigative scrutiny. Marriage creates spousal privilege. Journalist spouse provides ultimate optical shield. I stared at her. He wrote that down? He is a consultant. Allison, she said, a bitter smile touching her lips. He documents everything. He didn't fall in love with me. He targeted me. He curated a version of himself. Philanthropic. Principled. Reform-minded. Because he believed that if he married me, he would become untouchable. Who investigates the husband of a Pulitzer finalist? She looked at me, and her eyes were wet. He thought I was a trophy that would double as a shield, she whispered. He didn't think I would look behind the curtain. I reached out and took her hand. It was cold. We are going to burn it down. Rowan, I said. Yes, she said. We are. I returned to the Bright Morrow office late that afternoon. The mood was tense. The payroll freeze was still technically in effect. Though Elena had bought us time, the developers were working with headphones on. Avoiding eye contact, Ben followed me into my office. He closed the door and locked it. Ben looked terrible. He had dark circles under his eyes, and he was sweating. We need to talk. Allie, he said. What is it? I asked. Did the bank call? No, he said. It is not the bank. It is me. He sat down heavily in the chair opposite my desk. I heard you on the phone with the lawyer. He said, I heard you talking about Marlowe Stratfield. About the connections. I nodded. Yes, we are building a case. Allie, he said, his voice cracking. You can't use me as a witness. Why not? Because I took money from them, he said. The room went silent. The hum of the server rack in the corner seemed to grow louder. What do you mean? I asked slowly. 4 years ago, Ben said, before I joined Bright Morrow, I was freelancing. I was broke. A recruiter from Marlowe contacted me. They needed a technical consultant to review some grant applications for a trust. North Pine. I whispered. Yes, he said. They paid me $5,000 to review 10 applications. One of them was yours. I stared at him. You reviewed my application? He nodded miserably. They told me what to look for. They didn't want the best tech. They wanted the most stable. They told me to flag the companies that had manageable leadership. I flagged you. Allie, I gave you a high score on technical competence but a low score on disruptive potential. That is why they picked you. Because I told them you were safe. He put his head in his hands. I didn't know it was a setup. Allie, I thought it was just a weird gig. But when you hired me, when I realized who you were, I was too ashamed to tell you. I have been withholding it for 3 years. And now, if you go public and they dig into your staff, They are going to find my name on their payroll. They are going to say your own CTO is part of the conspiracy. I sat there, processing the betrayal. Ben, my right hand, the guy who had coded side by side with me for 70 hours a week. He had been the gatekeeper who let the vampire in. He looked up at me. His eyes were red. "You should fire me," he said. "If you fire me now, you can say you didn't know. You can cut the tie. It protects the company." I looked at him. I looked at the fear in his face. Grant would fire him. Grant would see him as a liability. A loose end to be cut. That was the Marlowe Stratfield way. Protect the optics. Sacrifice the human. But I was not Grant. I stood up and walked to the window. I looked out at the parking lot, at the dented cars of my employees. "How much did they pay you?" I asked. $5,000, Ben said. "And how much fraud have we stopped since then?" Ben blinked. "Millions." I turned back to him. "I am not firing you." "Ben," he gaped at me. "But the optics." "Screw the optics," I said. "We are not playing their game anymore. We are telling the truth. And the truth is messy. The truth is that they compromised everyone. They compromised me. They compromised you. They bought us when we were desperate." I walked over to him. "We are going to document it," I said. "You are going to write a sworn affidavit detailing exactly what they asked you to look for. You are going to explain the manageable leadership criteria. Your testimony proves that the selection process was rigged from the start, but it makes me look like a sellout." Ben said, "It makes you a whistleblower." I said. He stood up. He looked at me, and for the first time in days, he looked like the Ben I knew. "Okay," he said. "I will write it." "Good," I said. "Now get back to work. We have a product to ship." My phone buzzed that evening while I was eating takeout at my desk. It was Rowan. I just got an anonymous tip. "Signal message. Sender blocked. What does it say?" I typed back. "Ask Allison about the gala recording. 2021. The speech." I stared at the screen. The gala recording. I remembered the gala. The North Pine inaugural gala. The one in the photo on my parents' mantelpiece. I remembered wearing a stiff blue dress I hated. I remembered Grant insisting I attend. "You have to say a few words, Allie. Just thank them. It is polite." I hadn't prepared a speech. Grant had handed me an index card 5 minutes before I went on stage. "Just read this. It is better if you stick to the messaging." I scrambled to my laptop. I searched the local news archives. Nothing. I searched YouTube. Nothing. Then I remembered. The videographer. My mother had hired a private videographer to film the family table because she wanted a keepsake. I dug through my digital cloud storage. Family events, 2021, North Pine Gala. There it was, a raw video file. I clicked play. The camera was shaky at first, focused on the centerpiece, then it panned up to the stage. There I was, younger, looking terrified, holding an index card. I turned up the volume. "I want to thank the North Pine Civic Trust," the video Allison said. Her voice was thin, high-pitched, not just for the funding, but for the vision. In a world of chaos, North Pine provides the structure we need. I watched myself. I didn't remember saying that. "True innovation requires guidance," I continued, reading from the card. "It requires a partnership between capital and character. North Pine is the future of civic trust because they understand that unchecked ambition is dangerous. They help us channel our energy into approved pathways. Unchecked ambition is dangerous. Approved pathways." I paused the video. My breath was catching in my throat. Those were not my words. I would never say that. Unchecked ambition is dangerous? That was Grant's philosophy. That was the cage he had built for me. I watched the video again. I watched my brother standing in the wings of the stage. He was nodding. He was mouthing the words along with me. He had written the speech. He had put the words in my mouth. And I, in my desperation to please him, in my gratitude for the money, had stood on a stage and publicly validated his ideology of control. I was not just a narrator, I was a puppet, and someone had filmed it. I looked at the anonymous tip message again. "Ask Allison about the gala recording." Who sent it? It wasn't Grant. He would want this buried. It was someone who knew where the bodies were buried. Someone who wanted me to see exactly how deep the strings went. I downloaded the file. I saved it to 3 different hard drives. I looked at the face of the young woman on the screen. She looked so eager to be good, so eager to be loved. I hated her. And then, slowly, the hate turned into something else. Grief. I grieved for the years I had spent thinking I was the problem. I closed the laptop. I knew what I had to do. Grant had used my voice to build his lie. Now, I was going to use my voice to tear it down. I set up my phone on a stack of books on my kitchen table. The lighting was terrible, a harsh yellow glare from the overhead fixture that cast deep shadows under my eyes. But I did not care about production value. I hit the red record button. My name is Allison Bailey. I said to the empty room, I am the founder of Bright Morrow Labs, and for the last 4 years, I have been a prop in a story I did not know was being written. I stopped. I looked at the lens. It felt performative. It felt like I was trying to sound like a whistleblower in a documentary. I took a breath and started again. My name is Allison. I started my company because I wanted to help small business owners sleep at night. That is the truth. But the money I used to build it, the money came with strings I chose not to see. I paused. The silence in the apartment was heavy. I thought about the gala video. Unchecked ambition is dangerous. I thought about the index card Grant had handed me. I trusted my brother. I said, I trusted the system, and because I trusted them, I allowed myself to be. I couldn't finish the sentence. I allowed myself to be edited. The realization hit me not like a wave of panic, but like a sudden, crushing weight of grief. I put my head in my hands. I didn't cry because I was afraid of North Pine or the bank or the lawsuit. I cried because I suddenly saw the last decade of my life clearly. I saw every time I had swallowed a retort, every time I had softened my pitch deck because Grant said it was too aggressive, every time I had nodded along to a sermon about sustainable growth when I wanted to sprint. I had been pruning myself to fit into a pot that was too small, just so they would keep watering me. I let the camera roll. I let it capture the shaking of my shoulders. I let it capture the ugly, unvarnished sound of a woman realizing she had been an accomplice in her own diminishing. 2 days later, Grant called. He did not scream. He did not threaten. He sounded tired. Come home, Allie, he said. Not to Mom and Dad's. To the old house. I'm making dinner. Just us. Please, I should have said no. Rowan would have told me to say no. But he was my brother. And despite everything, despite the shell companies and the scripts and the manipulation, there was a part of me that still remembered him holding my hand when I got stitches in the 3rd grade. I drove to the house. It was the place we had grown up in before my father's career stumbled and they downsized. Grant had bought it back 3 years ago as an investment property. He kept it staged. Furniture wrapped in plastic, but the kitchen was functional. When I walked in, the smell hit me. Roasted garlic, rosemary, chicken. It was the smell of Sunday afternoons before the world got complicated. Grant was at the stove. He was wearing an apron over his dress shirt. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. I made the risotto. He said, not turning around, the one with the mushrooms, you used to love it. I stood in the doorway, clutching my purse like a shield. I still love it, Grant, but I'm not hungry. He turned then. His face was pale. He poured 2 glasses of wine and set them on the granite island. Sit down, Allie, please. I sat on the edge of a bar stool. I did not touch the wine. I know what you are doing, Grant. I said, I know about the preferred narrators. I know about the compliance squeeze. I know everything. He sighed, picking up his glass. He swirled the red liquid, staring into it. You think I am the villain, he said softly. You think I am some corporate monster who chews people up. The evidence is fairly compelling. I said, you do not remember 2008, do you? He asked. I frowned. I was 15. Of course I remember. You remember the downsizing, he said. You remember moving houses. But you do not remember the nights Dad sat in the garage with the engine running, staring at the wall. Because he had lost his pension, and he did not know how he was going to feed us. I went still. I did not know that. I found him. Grant said. I turned off the car. I walked him back inside. I was 22. I had just started at Marlowe, and I made a promise to myself that night. I promised that no one in this family would ever be that vulnerable again. I promised that I would build a wall of money and influence so high that the water could never touch us. He looked at me, his eyes burning with a desperate intensity. I did it for us. Allie, everything I did, the North Pine deals, the connections, the aggressive leveraging, it was to buy us safety. I got you that grant because I wanted you to be safe. I wanted you inside the wall. I felt a crack in my chest. I saw the 22-year-old boy, terrified and burdened, trying to carry a weight that wasn't his. You didn't just build a wall, Grant, I whispered. You built a prison. You decided that safety was more important than truth. Safety is the only truth, he snapped, slamming his glass down. Wine sloshed over the rim, staining the white marble like blood. Do you think the world cares about your integrity? Allison, the world is a meat grinder. Marlowe Stratfield, North Pine. They are the operators who keep the gears from crushing us. I got us a seat at the table. He took a breath, composing himself. He reached across the island, his hand hovering near mine. We can fix this, he said, his voice dropping to a persuasive murmur. I can make the bank investigation disappear. I can get Bright Morrow a government contract that will set you up for life. All you have to do is stop talking to Rowan. Just let it fade. I looked at his hand. It was shaking slightly. And what about Rowan? I asked. She is going to publish. Grant, whether I help her or not. Grant let out a short, sharp laugh. It was a sound devoid of humor. Rowan will not publish, he said. Why are you so sure? Because she owes me, he said. The air in the kitchen seemed to freeze. She owes you? I repeated. I gave her access. Grant said. He picked up a rag and started wiping the spilled wine, his movements jerky and aggressive. Who do you think introduced her to the senator for her breakdown series? Who do you think leaked the pharma memos that got her the Pulitzer nod? Me. I fed her those stories. Allison. I made her career. She thinks she is this independent crusader, but she is just as much a product of my network as you are. He looked up, his face twisted in a sneer of ownership. She is not going to burn the man who made her, he said. She knows how the game is played. She is smart. That is why I picked her. I stared at him. The sympathy I had felt moments ago evaporated, leaving only a cold, hard clarity. He did not love Rowan. He did not love me. He did not even see us as people. We were investments. We were assets he had acquired, cultivated, and expected a return on. To Grant, loyalty wasn't an emotion. It was the repayment of a debt. I stood up. You are wrong. Grant, I said. About what? You think you made us, I said. But you just bought the rights to our names, and the lease is up. I walked out. He shouted after me. Allison, do not walk out that door. Allison. I got in my car and drove. I did not look back at the house. I did not look back at the brother who had saved our father only to become the very thing that had broken him. Rowan ended it the next morning. I was not there, but she came to my office afterward. She looked like she had walked through a hurricane. Her hair was windblown, her coat buttoned wrong. She walked past the reception desk, past the staring developers, and into my office. She closed the door and leaned against it. It is done, she said. I stood up. Did you tell him? I gave him the ring. She said, I told him I was not an asset he could manage. I told him that the interview runs on Sunday. And? She let out a breath that shuddered in her chest. He did not beg. She said, he did not cry. He just switched. He turned into the relationship closer. He looked at me like I was a hostile witness. She walked over to the window, wrapping her arms around herself. He told me that if I publish, he will destroy you, she said. Me? I asked. He said he has the audit logs from your server, she said. He said he can prove that Bright Morrow's code is based on stolen IP from a Marlowe subsidiary. That is a lie, I said. I wrote every line of that kernel myself. It does not matter if it is a lie, Rowan said, turning to face me. He says he can tie you up in litigation for 10 years. He says he will leak the rumor to the tech blogs tomorrow. He will make you radioactive. No investor will touch you. No client will sign with you. He said he will turn you into dust to teach me a lesson. I sat down on the edge of my desk. My hands were cold. He's holding me hostage. I said, "To stop you." "Yes," she said. She looked at me. Her gray eyes filled with a terrible resolve. "We can wait. Allison, we can delay the story. We can build a defense against the IP claim before we go to print. It might take 6 months, but I am not willing to sacrifice your life to get this scoop." I looked at the whiteboard on my wall. I looked at the diagram of the fraud detection system I had built. It was good work. It was honest work. If we wait, I said, he wins. He keeps doing this. He keeps buying people. He keeps silencing them, but he will burn you down. Rowan said, "Let him try." I said, the escalation began 24 hours later. It started with a polite email from our cloud hosting provider. Notice of service suspension. We have received a credible notification regarding potential intellectual property violations hosted on your instance. Per our terms of service, we are suspending your account in 48 hours pending an investigation. Then, a call from our biggest client, a regional hardware chain. "Allison, look, we love the product, but we got a call from our legal team. Apparently, there is some risk exposure with your licensing. We have to pause the contract." It was surgical. It was silent. There were no lawyers serving papers at the door. Just a quiet dismantling of the infrastructure that kept my company alive. This was soft power. It was the whisper network of the elite, closing ranks to suffocate a problem. By Thursday, the office was a ghost town. The developers were playing cards in the break room because they couldn't push code to the suspended servers. Ben was sitting at his desk, staring at a blank monitor. I sat in my office, watching my company evaporate. My phone rang. It was my mother. "Allison," she said. Her voice was shrill. "Grant tells me you are being stubborn. He says he is trying to help you with a legal issue, and you are refusing to speak to him. Why are you doing this? Why are you trying to ruin the family?" I hung up. I looked at the phone. I blocked her number. Then I called Rowan. "I am done." I said, "Done with the story?" she asked, her voice cautious. "Done waiting." I said, "I want you to call your editor. I want to talk to him directly." "Allison, are you sure?" "I want a condition." "Rowan, what condition?" "If you publish," I said, my voice steady, "you publish everything. You do not paint me as a victim. You do not paint me as a hero who woke up. You write that I took the money. You write that I was willfully blind because I wanted to succeed. You write that I was part of the system until it turned on me." "But why?" Rowan asked. "That makes you look—" "It makes me look guilty." I said, "And I am. But if you publish the whole truth, Grant can't blackmail me. He can't leak my secrets if I have already shouted them from the rooftops. I am taking away his leverage. Rowan, I am burning my own house down so he can't evict me." There was a long silence on the line. "Okay," Rowan said. "I will set up the call." That night, there was a knock on my apartment door. I looked through the peephole. Expecting Grant, expecting a process server. It was my father. He was wearing his old raincoat, the one he used to wear when he took the train into the city for work. Back before the fall, he looked wet and uncomfortable. "Dad?" I opened the door. "May I come in?" "Allison?" I stepped back. He walked in, bringing the smell of rain and damp wool. He stood in the middle of my small living room, looking at the piles of documents I still had stacked on the floor. "Your mother is very upset." He said, "I know." I said, "I am sorry." He nodded. He took off his hat, turning it in his hands. I heard what happened with the hosting provider. He said, "And the bank? Grant works fast?" I said. My father sighed. He looked older than I remembered. The powerful man in the gala photo was gone. In his place was a man who had spent 20 years making himself small to fit inside the life his son had bought for him. I always suspected. He said quietly, "Suspected what?" "That the money wasn't clean." I looked at him. "You knew?" "I didn't know." He said, "I chose not to ask. When Grant started bringing checks, when he paid off the mortgage, when he paid for your college, I was just so relieved. Allison, I was drowning, and he threw me a rope. I didn't ask where the rope came from." He looked up at me, his eyes watery. "I failed you," he said. "I let him become the father, and because he was paying the bills, I let him set the rules. I let him treat you like a subordinate because I was too ashamed to challenge him." "Dad," I said, stepping toward him. He held up a hand. "I cannot stop him. Allison, he is too strong now. He has the lawyers, the board, the trust." But he reached into his coat pocket. He pulled out a small, silver hard drive. "I was in his office last week," he said. "He asked me to drop off some tax documents. He left me alone for a few minutes. His computer was unlocked." "Dad," I breathed. "You didn't." "I searched for your name," he said. "I wanted to see what he was saying about you. I found a folder." He handed me the drive. "It is not just you, Allison. It is a playbook." I took the drive. It felt heavy, cold. "Thank you," I said. He touched my cheek. His hand was trembling. "Be brave, Allie," he said. "Be the one I wasn't." I plugged the drive into my laptop as soon as he left. The file structure was terrifyingly organized. Marlowe Stratfield. Reputation Management Protocols. I opened a document titled Containment Playbook. Level 3 Threat. It was a checklist. 1. Financial asphyxiation. Trigger automated compliance flags. Banking payroll. 2. Vendor isolation. Issue IP. Infringement notices to upstream providers. Hosting. API. 3. Social discrediting. Leak localized rumors regarding mental instability or incompetence. 4. The Savior Pivot. Target offers rescue terms in exchange for NDA and equity surrender. I read down the list. I ticked them off in my head. Banking freeze? Check. Hosting suspension? Check. She is spiraling? Check. Julian Vance's friendly check-in? Check. It was not personal. That was the most chilling part. Grant wasn't doing this because he was angry at me. He was doing it because it was step 3 on a list he had probably written 10 years ago. I wasn't his sister in this moment. I was a level 3 threat. I kept clicking. I found emails between Grant and the North Pine board. Subject: The Bailey Optic. Date: 2023. Grant: We need to keep Brightmorrow strictly in the SMB lane. If she grows too fast, she attracts diligence. Keep her underfunded but operational. She is more useful as a struggler than a unicorn. He had actively suppressed my growth. He had kept me small on purpose. I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. The anger was gone. The grief was gone. What was left was the cold, hard resolve of an engineer looking at a broken system. This wasn't about Grant. Grant was just a cog. He was a man who had been traumatized by poverty and had sold his soul to a machine that promised him control. He loved the machine because it made him feel powerful, but he was just a mechanic. The real enemy was the ecosystem, the system that allowed a charity to be a slush fund, the system that allowed a consulting firm to weaponize compliance, the system that turned families into assets and liabilities. I picked up my phone. I dialed Rowan. "I have the smoking gun." I said, "What is it?" "It is the manual." I said, "I have the playbook they are using to kill me." "And Rowan?" "Yes." "We are going to publish it. All of it. I want every founder, every journalist, every nonprofit director to see the list. I want them to know exactly what it looks like when the machine tries to eat you." I looked at the camera I had set up on the table days ago. I hadn't turned it on since the breakdown. I reached out and pressed record. "My name is Allison Bailey," I said, my voice steady, my eyes dry, "and I am about to show you how the world actually works. The article was titled, "The Narration Economy: How a Midwestern Trust Bought the Voices of a Generation." It was not a puff piece. It was not a profile. It was an autopsy. Rowan had sent me the final proof at 3 a.m. on Sunday. I sat in my kitchen, the blue light of the laptop illuminating the empty coffee mugs and stack of legal pads that had become my life, and I read my own vivisection. Rowan had kept her promise. She had not painted me as a hero. There were no paragraphs extolling my bravery or my genius. Instead, she had described me exactly as I had been, a struggling founder who was hungry for validation, who took money she did not understand, and who allowed her public persona to be curated by men who viewed her as a useful optic. It was brutal, it was humiliating, and it was the most honest thing anyone had ever written about me. The piece detailed the mechanics of the North Pine Civic Trust, the pass-through entities, the consulting contracts, the specific criteria for manageable leadership. It named Marlo Stratfield. It named Grant Bailey. It named the preferred narrators. I texted Rowan, "It is perfect." She replied instantly, "Get some sleep. The war starts at 9. The war started earlier than that, at 7:30 in the morning, 2 hours before the article was scheduled to go live. My phone rang. It was Elena, the lawyer from the legal clinic. "Do not panic," she said. Her voice was sharp, awake. "I'm not panicking," I said, pouring coffee. "I am numb." "What is it?" "We just got served," Elena said. "Grant filed a complaint in the district court this morning. He is seeking an emergency injunction to stop the publication of the article. And he has filed a civil suit against you personally for misuse of charitable funds." I stopped pouring. The coffee overflowed onto the counter, a hot brown puddle spreading toward my papers. "Misuse of funds?" I repeated. "He is alleging that you used the North Pine grant for personal expenses," Elena said. "He claims he has an internal audit showing you used the $50,000 to pay off personal credit card debt, violating the terms of the grant. He is arguing that your testimony to Ledgerline is an attempt to blackmail him into silence about your embezzlement." I laughed. It was a dry, jagged sound. "He is projecting." I said, "He is taking exactly what he did, using money to buy silence, and accusing me of it. It is the savior pivot from the playbook." "Exactly," Elena said. "He is trying to muddy the water. He wants the headline to be, 'Sister accused of fraud attacks brother,' instead of trust fund exposed for corruption." "Can he stop the article?" "No," Elena said. "Prior restraint is a high bar, and Ledgerline has the receipts, but he can ruin your credibility. If the public thinks you are a thief, they won't listen to your story." I grabbed a towel and wiped up the coffee. My hands were steady. "Let him file." I said, "Allison, this is serious," Elena warned. "I know it is," I said, "but he is bringing a knife to a gunfight. He is arguing about credit card debt. I have the video." "The video?" Elena asked. "You will see," I said. "Let the article drop. I will handle the narrative." At 9 o'clock, the link went live. I sat in my office at bright morrow, refreshing the page. The view count on the Ledgerline site started to tick upward. 1,000, 10,000, 50,000. The internet does not react slowly. It reacts like a chemical explosion. By 9:30, North Pine was trending. By 10, Marlo Stratfield was trending. I watched the comments roll in. People were angry. They were dissecting the documents Rowan had uploaded, the emails, the risk assessments, the lists of narrators. They were connecting the dots faster than we had. But then, Grant's narrative started to seep in. A bot network, or maybe just his friends in high places, started circulating the lawsuit. "This Allison Bailey is a fraud," one comment read. "Her brother is suing her for stealing the money. She is just trying to cover her tracks. Sounds like a bitter sister jealous of her brother's success." Another wrote, "Classic family drama. The doubt was taking root. Grant knew how to play this game. He knew that complexity was his friend. If he could make the story about a messy family squabble." People would tune out. They would shrug and say, "They are all bad," and the system would survive. I looked at the clock. 10:15. It was time. I opened my laptop. I logged into my personal social media accounts, platforms I had barely touched in years, curated by PR consultants to look professional and bland. I uploaded the file. It was not just the gala footage, it was a split screen. On the left was the grainy video of 28-year-old Allison standing on the stage in her blue dress, reading from the index card. On the right was me, sitting in my kitchen, wearing a sweatshirt, looking directly into the camera. I titled it, The Script. I hit post. I watched the progress bar load. 90%, 100%. I leaned back in my chair. The video started playing on my screen. On the left, the young Allison smiled nervously. "I want to thank the North Pine Civic Trust," she said. "In a world of chaos, North Pine provides the structure we need." On the right, the current Allison watched her younger self with sad eyes. "That is me," my voiceover said. 5 years ago. I look happy. Don't I? I look grateful. I had just received $50,000 that saved my company. The video on the left continued. "Unchecked ambition is dangerous," the young Allison read. The current Allison spoke over her. I didn't write those words. My brother, Grant Bailey, handed me that index card 5 minutes before I went on stage. He told me that if I wanted to be a leader, I had to stay on message. I had to agree that ambition was dangerous. I had to agree that I needed to be managed. The video cut to the clip of Grant in the wings, mouthing the words along with me. "See him?" my voiceover asked. "That is Grant. He is not just a proud brother, he is the author. He wrote the script, he arranged the funding, and he chose me not because I was brilliant, but because I was desperate enough to read his lines." The current Allison leaned into the camera. "My brother filed a lawsuit today accusing me of fraud. He says I misused the money, and in a way, he is right. I used the money to build a company that I thought was mine, but was actually his. I used the money to buy into a lie. But I am done reading the card." I said, "I am done being a preferred narrator. The documents Ledgerline published today are real. The system is real. And no amount of lawsuits can unsay what I just said. My name is Allison Bailey, and for the first time in my life, this is my voice." The video ended. I waited. The comments stopped. The fraud accusations vanished. Then, the floodgates opened. I was at that gala. Someone wrote, "I remember this speech. It felt weird then. Now I know why. This is brave." Another wrote, "My brother did the same thing to me in our family business. Look at the guy in the wings." Another pointed out, "He looks like a puppeteer." The video was shared 100 times, then 1,000, then 10,000. I had bypassed the media. I had bypassed the courts. I had gone straight to the audience, and I had shown them the strings. Grant was scheduled to appear on Market Watch Daily at noon. It was a booked appearance. Arranged days ago to discuss the future of Midwestern philanthropy. It was supposed to be his victory lap. Now, it was his trial. I went to the break room where Ben and the few remaining developers were gathered around the TV. They made space for me. No one said a word. Grant appeared on the screen. He looked impeccable. His suit was navy, his tie a deep burgundy, but there was a sheen of sweat on his upper lip that the studio lights couldn't hide. The host, a sharp-featured woman named Diane, did not smile. "Mr. Bailey," she said, "thank you for joining us." Obviously, the conversation has changed since we booked this segment. Grant smiled. It was the smile of a man whose parachute was failing, but who refused to stop waving. "It is a difficult day." "Diane," he said smoothly, "it is always tragic when private family matters spill into the public square. My sister is unwell. We are trying to get her the help she needs." Diane looked down at the papers on her desk. "We have received a statement from your sister, Mr. Bailey, and a video that is currently trending #1 worldwide. But more importantly, we have the documents released by Ledgerline." She picked up a sheet of paper. "This is an internal memo from Marlo Stratfield. It lists you as the relationship closer for the North Pine account. It explicitly states that your role was to identify, quote, Vulnerable narrators who could be leveraged for reputational laundering. Grant's smile faltered. That is a misinterpretation of standard consulting language. He said, "We build relationships. We help founders tell their stories." Diane interrupted him. "The memo also lists your fiancé, Rowan Cade. As a pending acquisition." The studio went silent. You could hear the hum of the air conditioning through the television speakers. Grant blinked. His eyes darted to the side. Looking for a producer. Looking for an exit. "Rowan is a respected journalist," he stammered. "I supported her career. I gave her access. You gave her access." Diane repeated. "That is an interesting phrase, because according to Ms. Cade's reporting, which is running alongside the investigation, you curated that access to ensure she never looked at your own firm. That is preposterous," Grant said. His voice rose. He was losing the baritone. He was sounding shrill. "I am a private citizen. I am a philanthropist. This is a smear campaign orchestrated by a bitter ex-fiancée and a sister who failed at her own business." Diane looked at the camera. Then she looked back at Grant. "Actually, Mr. Bailey," she said, "we just received a statement from the board of directors at the North Pine Civic Trust. They have accepted your resignation from the advisory committee, effective immediately, and they are launching an external audit of all grants issued under your recommendation." Grant froze. He hadn't known. They had cut him loose while he was in the green room. The mask didn't just slip. It shattered. On live television. Grant Bailey looked at the camera with the expression of a child who realizes the door is locked and the monsters are real. I have to go," he said. He stood up. He pulled the microphone off his lapel, tearing the fabric of his jacket. He walked off the set while the cameras were still rolling. In the break room, Ben let out a low whistle. "He is dead." Ben said. "No," I said, watching the empty chair on the screen. "He is not dead. He is just obsolete." The victory on television did not put money in the bank. By 2:00, the high of the broadcast had faded, and the reality of the balance sheet set in. The bank freeze was still in place. The cloud hosting was still suspended. We had won the narrative war, but we were losing the war of attrition. I sat in my office with Ben. "We can't make payroll tomorrow," Ben said quietly. "Even if the bank unfreezes the accounts next week, the checks won't clear in time. The landlord is threatening eviction." I looked at the floor. I had told the truth. I had exposed the corruption, and the reward was going to be bankruptcy. It seemed fitting. In a dark way, the system would punish me one last time for breaking the rules. "Maybe we crowdfund?" Ben suggested. "A GoFundMe?" "No." I said, "I am not asking for charity." That is how I got into this mess. My phone rang. It was a number from Dayton, Ohio. I picked it up. "Allison? It is Jim. From Dayton Hardware. Jim was our first client. He was a gruff man who ran a chain of 4 stores. He had been the one who called yesterday to pause the contract because of the legal rumors." "Hi, Jim," I said, bracing myself for the cancellation. "I saw the video," Jim said, "and I saw that fellow on the TV. Your brother." "Yeah." I said, "It is a mess. Jim, I understand if you need to terminate the agreement." "Terminate?" Jim snorted. "Hell, Allison, I fired my lawyer this morning for telling me to drop you." I blinked. "You did?" "I know a hustle when I see one," Jim said, "and I know a good tool. Your software saved me $40,000 last year. That is real money. I don't care who your brother is or what fancy trust fund paid for the servers. The tool works. Thank you." "Jim," I said, feeling a lump in my throat. I called around. Jim continued. "I talked to the guys at the Builder Supply in Cleveland and Sarah over at the Logistics Hub in Detroit. We had a little conference call." "A conference call?" "Yeah. We figure you are probably in a tight spot with the banks right now. Banks get spooked easy. So, we put together a little bridge." "A bridge?" "We are prepaying our contracts for the next 2 years," Jim said. "All 12 of us. We pooled the cash. It is about $80,000. It should be hitting your wire in an hour." I sat up straight. $80,000. That was 3 months of payroll. "Jim, I don't know what to say. Don't say anything, Jim said. Just get your servers back online. And Allison? Yes? We are sending over some affidavits too, signed by all of us, stating that your product is legitimate and essential to our operations. You can give those to your lawyer. Let's see your brother argue with a bunch of angry hardware store owners. I laughed. And this time, it wasn't a jagged sound. It was real. Thank you. Jim. I hung up the phone. I looked at Ben. We are back in business. I said, How? Ben asked. The clients. I said, The real ones. The ones Grant said were too small to matter. They just saved us. It was the ultimate vindication. Grant had believed that power came from the top down, from trusts, from galas, from boardrooms, but he was wrong. Power came from the work. It came from the value you created for people who actually needed it. I had spent years trying to be a founder in Grant's definition of the word. But today, I was just a vendor who built a good tool, and that was enough. The fallout settled like ash over the next month. There were no arrests. The FBI did not kick down the doors of the North Pine Civic Trust. White-collar crime rarely ends in handcuffs. It ends in press releases. North Pine issued a statement denying any systemic wrongdoing but acknowledging procedural lapses in their grant allocation process. They announced a comprehensive internal review and pledged $10 million to a new transparency initiative. It was a rebrand. They would survive, but they would be watched. Marlowe Stratfield was quieter. They fired 3 junior partners. They renamed their philanthropic advisory division. They settled with Miller, the whistleblower, for an undisclosed sum to keep him from testifying further. Grant vanished. He sold the townhouse in Larkhill. He resigned from his boards. Rumor had it he had taken a consulting gig in Dubai, somewhere far away from the blast radius of his own reputation. He didn't say goodbye. He simply ceased to exist in the world he had tried so hard to rule. I received a letter in the mail on a Tuesday in March. It was on heavy cream stationery with the state seal embossed at the top. State Ethics Committee, subpoena to testify. Dear Ms. Bailey, you are hereby invited to provide testimony regarding the structural practices of nonprofit entities in the state. I held the letter. It was an honor. It was a validation. I was being asked to help rewrite the rules, but it was also a threat. I knew how this worked now. If I went, I would become a symbol. The reformer, the brave sister. They would try to put me on a pedestal, and pedestals were just another kind of cage. They would want me to be the face of the cleanup, just as Grant had wanted me to be the face of the corruption. I put the letter on my desk. I would go. I would testify, but I would wear jeans, and I would drive my own car, and I would not read from anyone's index card. Rowan came to see me one last time before she left for New York. She had gotten a job offer from the Times. The investigation had made her a star. But she looked tired. The victory had cost her a fiancé, a home, and a year of her life. We met at the same coffee shop where it had all started. The press room. The coffee was still terrible. So, Rowan said, stirring her tea. You survived. We did. I said, we are growing. Slowly, organically. No grants, no investors. Just revenue. That is dangerous. She smiled. You might actually build something sustainable. She pulled out her notebook. Old habits. I want to do one last interview, she said. I groaned. Rowan, please, no more press. Just for me, she said. Off the record. For closure. She opened the notebook to a blank page. What do you want now? Allison? She asked. You killed the dragon. You saved the village. What is the reward? I looked out the window at the gritty street. I thought about the invite from the ethics committee. I thought about Jim and Dayton. I thought about the silence in my head where Grant's voice used to be. I don't want a reward. I said, then what? I want to be unseen. I said, Rowan raised an eyebrow. Unseen? For years. I was selected. I said, I was chosen. I was highlighted. I was the promising female founder. I was the impact leader. I was a shiny object. I am tired of being shiny. Rowan, I leaned forward. I want to do the work in the dark. I want to build a company that is boring and sturdy and mine. I want to walk into a room and have no one know who my brother is. I want to succeed without anyone's permission and without anyone's applause. Rowan wrote it down. To build without permission. She read back. She closed the book. That is a good ending, she said. It is not an ending. I said, it is just the first line of the real story. We hugged outside the cafe. It was awkward. Brief. We were not friends. Exactly. We were veterans of the same war. We had seen each other's scars. I watched her walk away, her coat flapping in the wind. She was going on to the next big story, the next dragon. I turned the other way. I walked back toward my office, past the warehouses and the delivery trucks. I walked toward the hum of servers and the quiet, unglamorous work of keeping promises. The sun was coming out from behind the clouds, casting long shadows on the pavement. I stepped into my own shadow, and for the first time, it didn't feel like I was disappearing. It felt like I was finally taking up space. Thank you for listening to My Brother Said His Pulitzer Fiancée Was Too Accomplished. Then she interviewed me for Forbes 30 Under. This story was a journey into the hidden mechanisms of family pressure and corporate power. And I hope it resonated with you. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. Please drop your city and country in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into revenge, resilience, and the cost of truth, please make sure to subscribe to Revenge Stories for more realistic, high-stakes drama. And finally, I want to hear from you. Have you ever felt like a narrator in someone else's script? Share your thoughts in English in the comments. I read every single one. Until next time, keep writing your own story.